Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. My OBS crashed a few minutes before this, so I hope it's all fixed by now. I am too stupid because I am running a macOS Sequoia beta on my work MacBook Pro. So if anything happens, unless it's an internet issue, it's kind of on me. Let me just very briefly check what OBS says. Seems like it's all stable. The audio should also be working fine. Hope there are no dropped frames, and hopefully the system doesn't crash fully the way it did during my WWDC live stream, which was obviously completely infuriating. Now today, if something happens, maybe Google will just shut my internet off because I'm not talking nice about them, but I doubt that. Today we are talking about more Apple competition rather than Apple itself. However, we might go to other topics such as the iPhone SE4, which we've already covered yesterday, but there's some extra stuff that I would like to mention. And there's basically a small regurgitation of already existing rumors when it comes to the iPhone 16's cooling capabilities. That being said, before we get really into it, I want to encourage you guys to, again, please subscribe to the channel. Obviously, every new supporter is very much appreciated. Like the video, that helps a lot with the algorithm. Share it out to anybody who you think might enjoy it. And of course, comment, both while I'm live and when the video has already been uploaded. All of those things are very good for engagement, for the algorithm, and for me, because I love to know what you guys think, what you agree with, what you disagree with. I love having a lively live chat, as I call it. And if you feel like supporting the channel directly, there are super chats and super stickers that you can leave live in the live chat when you catch me live, I guess. That's a lot of the word live. But you can also become a channel member. Shout out to Angelica and Max Maximus, who are MarkTech Pro Max follower, I guess. I guess it's beyond just subscriber here on YouTube as channel members. And you can also support me directly on Patreon. Shout out goes to Louis Gold, who is our MarkTech Pro Max supporter over there. So a lot of opportunities for you to connect with me, for you to talk smack against me or whatever else you feel like. Of course, I'm always open to suggestions, what I should analyze, what I should react to. I do try to come on pretty regularly, but you see sometimes it's a little more like this week, sometimes it's less like last week. So please turn on the notification bell so you're actually informed when I'm going live, because unfortunately I don't have a very clear-cut schedule. That's just impossible for me given my work. So yes, but that's all the intro stuff out of the way. Thank you all for staying through that. And let's get to the really juicy parts, which is that we now have official leaks, because those are not leaks, those are actually official things from Google when it comes to the Pixel 9 Pro, the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. Now, you might think, well, those are completely stupid names. Those are so many numbers and letters. And yes, unfortunately, Google thought that Pixel Fold 2 might sound too bad in comparison to something like to like what Samsung is up with the Galaxy Z Fold 6 and Z Flip 6, and I know Xiaomi and other companies and Vivo are also introducing foldables that at this point are like at the 3 or 4 in their name. So maybe Google thought, well, we are gonna jam pack a 9 into our Pixel Fold, and that will make it look way better to consumers. I doubt that this will be a very well working strategy, but let's see. And Angelica, hello. As always, welcome to the stream. One of the channel members that I previously shouted out. Thank you so much for your continued support and joining the live chat. So what do we actually know about the Pixels that are coming up? Well, on the very basic thing, we know how they look like, which is they now have a flat frame, maybe ever so slightly rounded at the very edge. And then the visor that has usually had a very smooth transition to the overall chassis, at least to the side rails, of course, because the back is flat glass, it's now sticking out, and sticking out very, very aggressively. Like it looks almost like it's half the thickness of the actual like phone part is protruding over it. Now I know that because it's still quote unquote centered, in the sense that it's not like to one side the way it is on on the iPhone, that this wouldn't create like a wobble if you put it on a table. Now for me this has never been an issue because I've always used cases with my iPhones, but I know technically it wouldn't have that issue. But I just have to say, this design is a little weird. It is just hyper aggressive, right? One thing that I believe Apple pulled off really well with their like tri-stove design on the side of the iPhone is that I think it actually looks way less aggressive than one might think for having like three huge lenses. For one, they're surrounded by like colors, like if you want something to make it even like less imposing, you can choose a dark phone, right, for which the cameras will stick out less because obviously the lenses look dark to us. But just in general, because they are surrounded by glass that then becomes part of the overall glass back, that to me has always looked less aggressive than one might have thought, right? Originally, we were rumoring. Well, we actually don't have to speculate that much, right? When you think about the M1 iPad Pro or even like the A12X, no. When did Apple? I believe it would be the A12Z iPad Pro. Let me briefly check. A12Z iPad Pro. Images. Yeah, this is when we had like the back where you have like this dark lens, obviously being part of a bright, even the space gray is not too dark, aluminum chassis, and it's really sticking out visually, in my opinion. Now, whether or not that's too bad. I know some people don't actually prefer the way I do the design of the M4 iPad Pro. Why does my internet not load? Oh, here it is. So you can see that here if my face doesn't cover it, hopefully. That, yeah, basically Google has gone for this design that really sticks out against the rest of the frame. Unfortunately, on the iPad, it's like, unfortunately for Google, that is, this is a very small part of the iPad. And even there, Apple actually, after a few years, thought that this might look too much like sticking out. At least that's kind of my theory. That's what they thought. So then on the M4 iPad Pro, for example, by also removing one camera, they actually made it part of the rest of the chassis. So while yes, the lenses still stick out as being black, they do then flow into aluminum that then flows into the rest of the chassis. And yes, like titanium blue iPhone, that is the one I have. Right? When you look at that, you can see that yes, the lenses, of course, they're big, they are dark, and then you have like the shiny or glossy glass here, and then that one morphs into the matte blue design of the rest of the glass back. That to me looks far less aggressive than what Google is going with here. Now, even though this is shiny, this is still most likely aluminum. Well, you can make aluminum shiny, of course, but yeah, it invokes the look of a stainless steel iPhone Pro from prior generations, but it's not stainless steel as far as I know. And more importantly, all of this is official, like the main photos that I'm showing here of the Pixel itself, the Fold, etc. Those are all authentic. They all come directly from Google. Now, we also do have some spec leaks, but before I go to that, obviously you can think that the Pixel 9 Pro and the Pixel 9 Pro XL are basically the same when it comes to this design, except for that the Pixel 9 Pro XL is larger itself. However, once we move to the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, this is where I get very, very confused, and I really have to question whoever designed this if they really ask themselves, why am I designing it this way, right? Because on the iPhone, the reason why all cameras are to the side, right, is because this is how where the motherboard is. So this is the easiest way to connect them to it, the most space-saving thing. Of course, it does have its downsides. Like for example, I said because it's a non-centered camera arrangement, it would wobble if you put it on the table. You also cannot necessarily use it to like rest your finger against. Not only is it not centered, but like the glass itself is like smooth and not like a hard edge here, which for example on the Pixel you would actually be able to rest your finger here. So again, there are actually some benefits that have always been true for like the visor design. It's just I don't know why they went with this super hard edged one where the cameras protrude really far. But I can accept this, right? I can say this is like an opinionated design. I don't like that they went with flat edges simply because, well, that's what Apple does, so we must do it too. But once we move to the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, which again, terrible naming, where Google just wanted to have a 9 with the Fold in there, so it doesn't look like they have a vastly inferior product to like the Z Fold. Look at this camera. What is that supposed to mean? Like, I have legitimate questions, like why you would ever design it this way. It's the same hard protrusion that we have on the regular Pixel 9 Pro or Pixel 9 Pro XL. Now, I don't know whether or not this is as shiny, and maybe it just doesn't look that in the in the image. It does kind of look like it's just aluminum protruding, though. Um, but it doesn't look that good in my opinion anyway. Um, so what you get here, of course, is the hinge. You get your front display. The bezels are slightly too thick in my opinion. Like you want to make the screen as large as possible to like make the phone as usable as possible, even while folded up. I have a very, very like a small understand like what should I how should I put it nicely? I tolerated very, very little how many companies have treated front displays on their foldables. Some have seemed to make them almost like the star of the show, where they're so bezel-less and everything that why would I even open up the back screen? Because like this one has, in some cases, even has like a higher pixel density and stuff like that. But at this, and then Samsung has obviously made their front display way too narrow to actually be very useful. And then Google has like an overall form factor where like the aspect ratio of the front display is good, but then they compensate for it in a negative way by giving it pretty large bezels. So I have no idea. Well, obviously it is probably more cost saving to build it this way. It's just I like with how expensive foldables are, like I assume this will also be like an $18 and $1900 device. I just don't understand why you wouldn't give your users a premium experience. And speaking of premium experience, this is where we also now hit the camera section again. Because who in the seven hells thought it was a good idea to have this now uncentered protrusion, right? So this will wobble like hell on a table. None of the benefits that we've talked about that apply to the Pixel 9 Pro and Pixel 9 Pro XL apply to the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. And then now we have two black pills inside there. No red and blue pill or whatever. Just two black pills with different amounts of cameras. Why not unify it to the way? Why does the flash have to be part of this protrusion? Why cannot it be like if the flash is a small part, right? iPhone 10s or iPhone 10 doesn't really matter. This is Amazon. Nope. Images. There it is. You'll see, of course, the flash is part of the pill here with two cameras, but you can see that the flash is like made to look basically like a middle part here. It's almost the same size as the actual lenses, so it all looks quite symmetrical and quite nicely aligned. I still maintain this is the best camera protrusion that Apple has ever had, or camera bump, or however you want to call it, camera tumor, I guess, growing on your iPhone. Like, how the hell do you come up with two pills like that, but then the flash and the micro separate, and all of it part of a giant like non-centered protrusion on a foldable, which this to me is such an insane design decision. I just have no idea what happened here. Like, again, this is on a very basic level. We've talked about stuff like the Galaxy Watch Ultra or the Galaxy Buds 3 Pro, right? Where sometimes companies copy, but they don't really understand why they copy something, right? They just copy something to basically say, oh, we have iPhone at home, right? Or we got iPhone from Wish, like all that meme stuff. Why would you copy that if you already had a recognizable design for your cameras and now you redesigned that slightly, but like it's still very much noticeable as a Google Pixel? Now you went with a flat design. A flat design does actually have benefits, like even just from internal space usage, it's minimally more efficient than a rounded device. So here you copied iPhone, but you copied iPhones not for very bad reasons. I can live with that. Why have you copied the iPhone's camera position on the back and then have copied sort of like the iPhone 10 or 10s, like or it wouldn't even be the iPhone 10, right? It would be the iPhone 8, I guess, here, and it would be like the iPhone 8 Plus, I believe. Yes. So you can actually see that very well here, right? You have that pill with two cameras, you have a microphone and a flash. And what Google did, they took two of those pills, like in a separate way, and then basically said, okay, one side gets like the flash, and the other gets the microphone. In what way is that supposed to look attractive? It just looks like complete randomness. Like, even when Apple went with like a diagonal camera layout, at least we could say, well, they went with a larger sensor. It makes some sense that it would push the other sensor a little to the side, blah, blah, blah. And it's partially, of course, to differentiate the devices on design aesthetics. But why would you ever separate them like this, where it's like this does look sort of pixelish, I guess, but none in the way that this looks, or even like when you think about it, like the Pixel 8 Pro, like the current Google flagship, right? What does that look like? Right? A super recognizable visor going across the edge, having a smooth transition into the side rails of the device. Very, very recognizable at this point for generations, creating a hard edge here that you can rest your finger against. It's centered overall, so it doesn't wobble. I wish that the actual cameras were centered, but that's only a small complaint overall. So that was one of the best camera like designs, I would argue, on any smartphone. I still think I'm not a huge fan, I don't know, of the overall Pixel. I think outside of the visor, it has like very, very little own identity. But at least that was like a real identity. And maybe you could argue, well, this is like an evolution of that. Maybe it's a side grade at worst, right? For some people. For some, it will definitely be a downgrade, but it's not terrible. But this is just atrocious. And I've mentioned all the reasons that it gets rid of all the benefits of the previous design. I guess if that's how the motherboard is arranged, now it has the same benefit to it in terms of how it's arranged versus the iPhone. But that's like what it was that really worth giving up all like your previous like design aesthetic? I honestly don't know. When you look at it, the Pixel Fold actually, like the first generation one, what does the camera looks like on the back? Oh, see, it has it actually kind of started that design that we see now on the Pixel 9 Pro and Pixel 9 Pro XL, which is that it has a protruding camera that doesn't flow into the rest of the chassis. However, you can obviously blame that the chassis here looks, of course, different than a chassis on a regular Pixel because this is a foldable. So on the other side, you're kind of like hitting a very different geometry. So, and I don't want to like belabor the point that it like looks ugly or whatever, but this was like very clearly a small compromise versus the regular Pixel because it's a foldable, so it deserved a slightly different solution. Now you actually took that solution, you applied it to the regular Pixel, and somehow instead of doing that but smaller on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, you just went completely ham and made up something entirely different that just doesn't fit your aesthetic that you've been pushing for years at that point. So, guys, let me know in the chat. Do you agree with? Do you disagree with? Do you think I'm completely insane to be like this adversarial to be this to this design? But I just don't find anything likable about it. So this is basically like why I think they're weird. Now, again, I think that moniker like applies way more to the Pixel 9 Pro Fold than it does to the Pixel 9 Pro or Pixel 9 Pro XL. But I think this makes the overall family of Pixel 9 devices now very, very weird design-wise. It just loses a lot of the things I liked about the Pixel identity. Now, of course, smartphones are more than just design. At least I hope so. Even though, of course, we can all look at the design here, how it protrudes. But basically, we also now have spec leaks. Now, the Pixel 9 Pro, these devices will be powered by the Tensor G4 processor. Obviously, this is a successor to the previous generation Tensor G3. It is still built on Samsung 4 nanometer, but like a slightly newer version of Samsung 4 nanometer. Google is basically like the biggest customer for Samsung's 4 nanometer node. Almost nobody else wants it. So to me, it's just like, it's fascinating that obviously like the most imposing thing about this phone will be this design aspect. But when you actually think about what will be changing here, unfortunately, it's not that much. Now, there are some good things. For example, there will be a 16 gigs of RAM version, right? The Tensor G4, of course, is better almost definitionally than the Tensor G3. However, that being said, the Tensor G5 coming next year is where we are getting the actual big leap, because Google will be switching to TSMC, most likely their N3 E3 nanometer node. And supposedly Google has redesigned a lot of components of the processor to like be more custom. Currently, their most custom parts are their AI engine and their image signal processor, because obviously Pixels are kind of known for their camera prowess. But when it comes to like the CPU, the GPU, it's very much like off-the-shelf design, whatever Google can get from like Samsung or ARM. Supposedly, this at least partially changes with the Tensor G5. Now, it could still be that the actual core design comes from ARM or like from Samsung, but supposedly Google will be customizing it in some ways. Yeah, so this deal has actually been like in the books for a while. but obviously it cannot come into effect this year. Tensor G3 is still on 4 nanometer, and so will from Samsung, and so will be the Tensor G4. One part that is changing here is it being upgraded to a new Samsung modem. One part of the Pixels that people have actually maligned over the years are its relatively poor modems. Samsung modems are just by most accounts inferior to Qualcomm, and now it will be switching to the Exynos 5400, which supposedly is a bit better than the previous generation. Whether or not that's enough to compete with like X70 and X75 modem devices from obviously other Android vendors and Apple remains to be seen. Right now, unfortunately, Google Pixel devices are not in any way known for like great cellular connectivity. One thing that is also slightly disappointing for like a camera focused device will be 128 gigabyte base storage, but you could kind of live with that. What I definitely cannot accept is that it maxes out apparently at 256 gigabytes. This has been a pain point for many people over the years with Google, that they just don't create as many versions of their phones as people are asking for, or at least not at the price you kind of would want. And a lot of people have asked, double those storage capacities. You encourage us to take high quality pictures and videos. We now have to, like, for on device large language models, of course, we need more RAM, yes, but you also need to save those LLMs into storage. So that's another 1-2 gigabytes or something like that. So please give us more storage. And apparently that's not happening this year. Now, again, I do not know the final prices. If they have leaked, then I haven't seen them yet. But again, small improvements. Tensor G3 to G4, but still on Samsung 4 nanometer. Exynos 5300 modem to 5400. Now on Samsung 4 nanometer. 12 gigs of RAM to 16 gigabytes of RAM. But well, that's for the Pixel 9 Pro XL. But unfortunately, still some compromises, like 128 gigs of base storage. Of course, all those chip and modem choices right now are very much compromises in of themselves. One thing that could be like an advantage of Google over other Android manufacturers here would be their satellite support, so they could actually compete against Apple on that feature. It's very unfortunate for Samsung, because Samsung has been like working on satellite support for their own modems for a while, but they cannot really activate it because for the most part, because on their own phones, their flagship uses Qualcomm chips and modems. So that means that obviously if they give satellite support to cheaper devices who are completely running on Samsung chips and modems, that just doesn't make sense, because their Galaxy Ultra flagship cannot support that, because Qualcomm still is like, I actually don't know what is happening with Qualcomm and satellite support. If they completely axed it at this point, or they just delayed it indefinitely. But yeah, it seems like whatever Apple has pulled off with how they actually enable satellite support, despite using the same kind of Qualcomm modem that others are also using. So it's very likely an antenna thing. And of course, maybe a special modem that they add to like the A series chips or whatever. That is unfortunately something that Qualcomm devices are not for now replicating, but it seems like the Google Pixel 9 family using the Samsung 5400 modem could. So, and we've also seen some rumors that it would be getting 2 years of free satellite support, similar to what Apple's initial push was. Now I believe they've promised to extend it by a year, but we still don't know what the solution will be like beyond that. A lot of people have said Apple should just say, oh, it's indefinite, you are always getting free satellite support on iPhone. whether or not Apple wants to carry the cost. It's not a high cost by any means, but yeah, I don't know. I doubt that Apple will ever turn that functionality off. What I could see them basically doing after that the time frame elapses is that they say, look, we will always connect you to satellites and stuff like that. That will never depend on like on your carrier contract or whatever, but you will be charged retrospectively, because you also don't want people to abuse that feature, right? You don't want kids to like potentially call like emergency services over satellite, even though they don't need it or something like that. So, in my opinion, it definitely makes sense to always support that feature. Whether or not you keep that feature always for free, that is up to the companies. Apple, for now, is keeping it for free. Whether or not Google will be like more harsh and actually cut it off after 2 years, that remains to be seen. And the other part, we've talked about obviously the Tensor G4. We don't know really what its performance targets are. We've had some benchmarks like a few months ago almost. Those are all of pre-production devices. I don't want to use them. They were pretty low, just to put it that way. However, it seems like the issue that still needs most addressing is like battery life, because even with a 5,000 milliampere hour battery, the Pixel 8 Pro just didn't have the best battery life. It also tended to overheat easier than other Android competitors. So maybe Google introduces like a vapor chamber heatsink, similar to what like Samsung, Xiaomi, and other Android vendors have introduced, or they maybe go the route Apple will go later this year, which will be just to use a lot more graphite as a cover over the chip. However, that being said, Apple will be using a second generation 3 nanometer node, while Google will be using the latest version of Samsung's 4 nanometer. So that's like a full node behind. So I don't know how much they can fix without being super aggressive on cooling. And even then, if you give it too much cooling and the device can run at very high wattages for a prolonged period of time, now you're also once again asking, well, what does it battery life actually look like? And we know that the Pixel, unfortunately, kind of sucks when it comes. It's all relative, right? It's by modern standard. Obviously, if you look 5 years ago or 6-7 years ago, the Pixel 8 Pro would have relatively good battery life by those standards. But ever since then, we got like larger and larger batteries, more and more efficient processors, more and more efficient screens. So unless you max out the screen at like 2000 nits or something like that, battery life should still be noticeably better than even any flagship from 3 or 4 years ago. Unfortunately, that is not true for the Google Pixel, primarily because they just don't use a very efficient processor. Samsung's 4 nanometer is okay, I guess, as a node. It's kind of I wish like the Nintendo Switch 2 would use Samsung's 4 nanometer rather than Samsung 8 or 7 nanometer. But those are obviously like very different devices at very different price points. The Nintendo Switch will come with active cooling, things like that. The Pixel just cannot compete, unfortunately, with the rest. The cameras will be slightly improved, but a lot of the hardware is staying the same relatively. So we'll see how much like new image signal processors help here. Whenever we talk about Samsung, for example, I do like to cover like more like the hardware aspect. For one, because Samsung by itself is very much a hardware company, right? They design their own sensors, optics, whatever. But also Samsung uses a standard processor, right? The latest Qualcomm chips, sometimes their own Exynos chips, but very rarely, of course, for the Ultras. And then, like, we know what the ISP is capable of. We know that it just depends on the actual hardware being used, and of course, the Samsung specific image science, the algorithms, the AI, if you if you want to call it that. And on the Pixel, a lot of it is custom. They use like sensors off the shelf, actually Samsung sensors, but the Tensor chips have their own ISPs, and nothing besides Google's devices uses Tensor chips. So it's not like you can actually say like, oh, this camera is limited by this processor, or this processor is limited by that camera. It's just hard to say if you have like a unique hardware combination. And then of course Google has its own algorithms for its cameras, some of it the most advanced in the industry. So sometimes they can get by using somewhat inferior hardware while still delivering pretty great results. The one thing where it doesn't really work is for video, because ideally you still want a really fast chip, you still want like a relatively large sensor and everything else like that, to just maximize the amount of data you can have for video. Apple obviously pulls that off brilliantly, however they designed the ISP and the media encoders on their A series chips. It seems to work really well with for video capture. For Google, it hasn't worked that well over the years. Even in times when they had like larger sensors than the iPhone and things like that, they still had inferior video quality. And even when they had superior stills quality, they still had inferior video quality. And the same is also largely true for Samsung. So yes, we unfortunately obviously cannot really like review these devices, even though it seems like everything about them has basically leaked, like everything that kind of matters. And we even know stuff going into the future of what like the like Google's long-term plans are when it comes to Pixel hardware. Now, of one rumor that we also have for these Google Pixels is they would use Samsung's M14 materials for their OLED screens. So that would be one thing where they actually are using flagship technology, because the iPhone 16 Pro is rumored to adopt those kind of build process for OLEDs, and that will result in a potentially more efficient, longer lasting, and brighter screen. And for Google, it might be the same, or they might just use the same peak brightness, which was already pretty good on the Pixel 8 Pro, but then use the better efficiency to compensate for the unfortunately not so efficient processor. Now, I should say that, of course, this is coming officially from Google. So you cannot doubt the designs that I'm showing. You can, of course, agree with me or disagree with my conclusions and what I think of those gadgets. But yeah, those are actually like Google-made videos and stuff like that. Basically like a preamp to the event. That's happening in like 2 weeks or something like that. But you can see that Google, even before they like showed the design of the Pixel, they still are focusing on the AI capabilities. So one thing that is, as I said, is very custom about the Tensor chips are their AI accelerators. And they're very much built for like the Gemini models. So they will probably handle a lot more tasks offline for AI than like what Samsung is doing with Galaxy AI, which is like 99% handled in the cloud. So write me a breakup letter, say I found something that feels magical, that it's unfolding in new ways. Oh, and have it start, dear old phone. Okay. Oh, hi, AI. So basically, the one thing I do want to say as a nice thing for us, Google here, is that, of course, we are moving from the really large bezels on the original Pixel Fold to bezels that feel much more like what we also have on the competition, like the Galaxy Z Fold. So granted, the reason why I didn't pay too much attention to that before in this video is because this needed to happen, in my opinion. Like the Pixel 8 Pro, the Pixel Fold, like with those bezels on top and then the bottom, it just looked outdated already. So it's like, I think this is a good image. right? It just didn't look futuristic the way you expect a 2023 foldable to look. To be honest, most foldables look better like 2 or 3 years prior. And of course, in 2024, that would have been completely unacceptable. It was sort of excusable for like a first gen product. And now, obviously, on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, God, the name is so stupid. We are now having a full screen display with very symmetrical bezels, at least judging from this. So I'm very, very much on board. Let me know if you think that this is like an improvement, of course, over the Pixel Fold, the original, but also if you think if that makes up for any of the other complaints, of course, that I shared. Now the Pixel 9 Pro XL, here you can see a direct comparison with the Pixel 8 Pro. So if you ever ask yourself, why does Google leak their own devices like weeks in advance? Well, that's because those devices get leaked anyway, and people just create full-on videos analyzing them online, full-on galleries of like comparison pictures. I cannot move through the individual images. That's great. You can actually see that the 9 Pro looks somewhat thicker here, but that can also just be like a visual effect from how this is like tapering off on the sides. Yeah, I would say they're almost identical when it comes to thickness. Definitely nothing like experience breaking, at least not in my opinion. One thing that's also going to change here, looking at the front, is something that obviously you cannot see, which is that the Pixel 9 Pro is supposedly switching to an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor under the display. That should be a nice improvement over the current generation pretty slow optical fingerprint scanner. Again, usually ultrasonic is better, so I'm not obviously like gonna complain about that choice, but how big the actual like sensor area will be, if it's actually really fast, because biometrics still need to go through a chip, and that chip on Google devices has not been usually the fastest. So how the actual reality will look like remains to be seen, because obviously optical is kind of inferior to ultrasonic if you manage it through a display. However, we have also seen other companies do optical way better than Google, which means that just because they're switching to ultrasonic, that's kind of no guarantee that we are actually getting significantly like a better experience. And Daniel Gomes, or Jones, or something like that, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, welcome to the chat, saying, any rumors about the AI feature? Well, we've got a lot of stuff shown at like obviously at Google I/O. I don't think we have seen too much like exclusive thing leaked, but I would bet that there's at least 1 or 2 features that are like exclusive to the Pixel 9 family. That being said, I haven't actually paid too much attention to the Pixel 9 leaks, as I did even to like the Pixel 8 leaks a year ago. So if there is something and somebody here in the chat wants to let me know. I like to be corrected. I like to be informed. And yeah, obviously, I like to interact with you guys in the live chat. So what else do we see here? We see familiar buttons. We see the very different protrusions here. As I said, this flows nicely into the side rails. This very, very much sticks out. However, as I also said, this doesn't look terrible. My real complaints visually with the Pixel 9 family is the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. But yeah, it is still very much like a Google device, right? It doesn't reintroduce the headphone jack or SD card slots. It doesn't go crazy on even stuff like included storage. It doesn't give you replaceable batteries. It doesn't give you crazy battery capacities. It just feels very much like this is the latest Google Pixel, and they made some slightly weird design decisions with it. You can take it or leave it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm also not going to say this makes it awful. If you are actually a fan of the Google Pixel, you like the relatively clean UI that Google gives for their for Android skin on, well, is it technically a skin if it's from Google, for their Android design on the Pixel, then it's all good in my opinion. If you can stomach stuff like having a processor that is slower than like 2-year-old Apple processors and still pay flagship prices, that's up to you. This is why I usually recommend Pixel go for people go for the non-pro models or even like the A series, because they'll still have those chips, but now those chips don't suck as much in comparison to other mid-range devices in that price range. They're still relatively high priced in comparison to like Chinese alternatives, but like still way better value than I would argue than the largest pros. And guys, we've been streaming for like 45 minutes. I want to encourage you, if you're enjoying the stream, if you're enjoying the video, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out to anybody who you think might enjoy it. I always encourage you to be active in the live chat. I love having an active back and forth. If you want to support me directly, leave a super chat or a super sticker right while I'm live. I'm then guaranteed to read out your message or whatever. The other alternatives are to become a channel member here on YouTube, or to go to my Patreon and subscribe over there. Link for the later is in the description of this channel. So that is basically like what the Pixel 9 Pro. This is the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. Obviously, they advertise it all as like being built for the Gemini era. I'm very briefly gonna turn the music off here and let's see how they advertise the 9 Pro. This is, we've seen the video for the Fold. Wait, is that the same ad? Tell them I found something new that actually feels magic. Oh my God, it's the same thing, but for the Pixel 9 Pro rather than the Fold. Yeah, that's disappointing, unfortunately. Yeah, so when it comes to camera, I've said already that I don't want to like focus too much on hardware. The most disappointing thing for me is the reuse of the main sensor from last year, which I believe is like the Samsung GNK version. Like I still don't know how much they've actually customized it versus the other Samsung GN sensors out there, but yes, seemingly it is kind of custom. Daniel, you're saying, I heard they're doing a new assistant to be like Siri 2.0. It's going to be called Pixie. Wait, you are kidding, right? Tell me you're kidding. If that is true, I'm gonna kill myself in a video game. Right off the window in a video game. If that is no, I refuse to believe it. Unfortunately, I would kind of be inclined to believe it sometimes about Google. You guys are killing me. So the Pixel 9 Pro reuses the same camera as last year, the Samsung GNK. So the same sensor size, unfortunately not the largest sensor. I actually want to go, where was it? Did I not open GSM Arena? Like how large is the main sensor actually in the Pixel 8 Pro? Pixel 8 Pro. Main camera, 50 megapixel, 1 by 1.31. So the same camera size, the same main sensor size as on the on the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra and S23 Ultra. But yeah, a slightly custom version, but supposedly the same one being reused year over year. Now, the other part of that rumor, and I'm actually going to clean up my browser a little bit. I have 32 gigs of RAM, but I still prefer my browser clean. They will use an 1 by 2.51 for the ultra wide. I believe that should be slightly larger. They don't actually say how large this is. 0.8 micrometers for I guess I could calculate it somewhat, but I don't want to. um, but it's at least larger than the telephoto that we have here. But supposedly my God, I need to close so much now. Um, is that it's equipped with various functions equivalent to the Office, or this is particularly significant offer. Oh, okay. So they're using the same sensor now across 4 cameras and ultra wide telephoto across 3 cameras, ultra wide telephoto and selfie. Sony's this is particular. So that's a big upgrade over the selfie camera. Looking at the Pixel 9, the Sony is the ultra wide camera, while Google's using the same selfie sensor. Wait, where is the? Wait, meanwhile, it will reportedly be used for the ultra wide. Is that a different one than what we have here? What's mentioned here? Because for the telephoto, that is 5x optical zoom, we have a 1 by 2.55 sensor, but this one says it's going to be a 1 by 2.51 sensor across all those because they are saying new telephoto, ultra wide, and selfie. Oh, so it would be a new sensor for all of them. I thought that it might be the same as on the previous telephoto, but yeah, okay, that would actually be interesting. I hope that it also results in more even color signs. Like I know the 858 is a decent sensor. Obviously, at 1 by 2.51 size, it's like obviously no competition to like the main sensor, but it's still very usable. So, and especially a big upgrade over what we had here. Then the Pixel 9, of course, uses inferior stuff to the 9 Pro and 9 Pro XL. So that's very interesting here. I actually kind of like skipped that in my mind. I thought that the camera hardware would be relatively the same because I saw that the main camera would be the same, but I guess I was a little bit premature on that. So I'm issuing like a small correction here. Sometimes when I correct myself, I write it in like the comments or something like that, but I did catch myself here. I do not want to downplay whenever there's new technology. It seems like the sensors, like the actual camera stuff, will still be very similar. Like we're still seeing like 5x optical zoom and stuff like that. No things like variable zoom or variable apertures, or things like higher zoom than 5x. But yeah, it seems pretty good, and especially for things like the front camera, which have really not kept up well with the back cameras on the Pixel devices over the years. This is a welcome change in my opinion. So I'm not gonna definitely not gonna complain about that. That's good. Unfortunately, that still leaves them with a main sensor significantly smaller than what most Chinese counterparts are using on their flagships, which is close to a full 1-inch sensor in most. And Apple will be using, what is actually the rumored size? Is it like 1 by 1.17? Something like that? iPhone 16 Pro, main sensor larger. 1 by 1.14. Okay, so and that's an upgrade over the 1 by 1.28 sensor that it's using right now. So already an ever so slightly smaller sensor than a slightly larger sensor than what we have on the Google Pixel 8 and now 9 and on the Galaxy S24 and before that the 23 Ultra. But now the 16 Pro will take that to a larger sensor. The ultra wide will also be larger and have 48 megapixels. I guess the one area where Google kind of might have a real advantage would be in terms of telephoto because they're both at 5x. I believe that the iPhone would now have a significantly smaller like telephoto sensor here. iPhone 15 Pro Max. Main camera, 1 by 2.55. That's no, the telephoto is 1 by 3.06. So that's actually significantly smaller than what we have on the Pixel. So Apple would be kind of like beholden to hopefully superior like image signal processing and their better image stabilization, which we saw helped the iPhone generate much better low light telephoto images than its contemporaries like Samsung and Google, but then lose out in bright light because obviously this is a 12 megapixel relatively small sensor competing with like 48 megapixel sensors, 50 megapixel sensors that are ever so slightly larger. Not too, like the difference between a 1 by 3 and a 1 by 2 5-inch sensor is not that game changing. It can be overcome by things like image signal processing, but definitely if you can have a larger sensor, you want to have that larger sensor. And it seems like Apple definitely will be behind in that area versus the Pixel. Apple's ultra wide will be larger, I believe. Definitely larger than this. I'm not sure if it's that much larger. Like it could still be almost the same size as what the Pixel. iPhone 16 Pro, ultra wide. That's for the main sensor. Feature new 48 megapixel and ultra wide. A rumor out of Asia. You know how many people live in Asia? Would use was that found in the current iPhone? It's expected. Yeah, then the telephoto will go 48 megapixel next year, but we don't have the exact size, I guess, for the 48 megapixel ultra wide. Yeah, seems like we don't have the exact size for the ultra wide. Let me know if you actually know. Ultra wide camera backed by a larger 1 by 2.6-inch sensor. Okay, but that would make it smaller than what GSM Arena shows here, which is a 1 by 2.55 sensors. Do you have a recommendation for earbuds with good ANC between 90 pounds and 130 pounds? So like $100 to 150-ish euros. I bought nothing earbuds, but I've had to return tomorrow because the right ear got a lot lower than the left one. Yeah, I've heard people have some issues with the nothing buds. So for now, I will refrain from actually commenting here on the ultra wide. Because it seems like I'm getting some contradictory stuff because they say it's larger, but 1 by 2.6 is smaller than 1 by 2.55. But Apple could lean to deliver. The current iPhone 15 Pro's 12 megapixel, they say it's a 1 by 3.6 inch ultra wide sensor. Is that correct? Is the this sensor is expected to be 1 by 2.55. Okay, so maybe there's something wrong with GSM Arena, I guess. I usually trust their stuff. Kind of weird for them to get something like this wrong. If you guys actually watch this video and find it out, want to correct it, please leave it. Unfortunately, if not, I'll try to find the answers myself. Stuff like that. Usually, like I know that I knew like 1:36 is like, yes, this is the sensor size of their selfie cameras. So I would believe that the Pixel, for example, should have much better selfies. But yeah. I did not actually expect to see these numbers. One thing that I can actually do is look for the 14 Pro Max, because the 14 Pro Max has almost the same camera hardware in many ways. Yeah, and they still say it's the same. It's the same ultra wide. So maybe I should trust GSM Arena here. I doubt they would have gotten it wrong twice, unless they copy pasted. But this is the state of information I'm at. And when it comes to you, Daniel, you're asking for like ANC headphones. I don't know. Like, do the Anchor earbuds. What are they called? I always forget it. Soundcore. Is it like their is that their like division for like headphones? True wireless Bluetooth from Anchor. That's German. True wireless. I believe those have ANC at $100. Liberty 4 NC. Like, maybe look up some reviews for that. I've heard some good things about them. I don't know how trustworthy they are. I know they do have ANC. That's specifically like a feature that they pushed for, like having in that price range. Obviously, I have not tested them, but that's kind of like where I'm at. And then I would maybe look for like Samsung earbuds that might be like a little older at this point. Like, obviously nothing used, you don't want that for earbuds, but maybe like a heavily discounted Galaxy Buds 2 or something like that, whichever one supported ANC, because I saw prices there be like $50-$60 off. So that would be kind of my tip there. But yeah, I'm running with AirPods Pro 2. I'm quite happy with those. I actually had an issue where one of them was like, where the right side was acting up, and I even made like a Genius Bar appointment to get it replaced, but it started working completely fine again. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that much experience with other earbuds. Of course, you also have to consider with Anchor had like some privacy issues and stuff like that shouldn't really concern the earbuds themselves, but maybe you want to like boycott the company or something like that. So look into that if you maybe really want to be super ethical about your consumption. I always support that. I know that it's basically impossible to fully be super ethical in what we consume in today's society, but if you want to like do small steps in that regard, I fully support that. Now, there are the two last rumors. They aren't very big. One, it's actually all still coming from the information, which is the rumors that we've also analyzed yesterday when it comes to the iPhone SE4 and the iPhone Flip. Right, but unfortunately, I cannot read the information fully, so I'm reliant on that information. Like, and I'm not paying for their news because it's not a super reliable source that I would like to read forever and ever. Like the Wall Street Journal, yes, I might actually subscribe to things that let me access Mark Gurman's Power On newsletter, but yeah, I'm not paying the information, unfortunately, guys. Forgive me for that. But basically, one thing that we have gotten is the idea that mass production of the SE4 could be happening this October. That would make it a prime candidate for launch very early in 2025. We've talked yesterday about potential March to May launches. That could work if Apple wants to build up a pretty large inventory of iPhone SE 4s. But stuff like this speculates that it could be even a launch as early as January. Obviously, between January and March, it's not as big of a difference. If Apple starts producing in October but does it very slowly, and if it actually uses an A18 chip, and most of those A18 chips keep going into the production of iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, that could still mean that even though it starts production in October, it only goes on sale in March. Could be still something like January to reach a Lunar New Year, because obviously this would be a price competitive device that might be very much like targeting markets like China, like China or India. But yeah, so if you are interested in a cheaper device from Apple, I highly encourage you to wait in that regard. Not only because the iPhone SE 4 is likely to be pretty good by itself, but I believe its mere existence will push prices lower for like used iPhones, refurbished iPhones, or just like discounted iPhones. So I highly encourage you guys to wait unless you find like a really killer deal. I think that will be very much worth it. And the last but not least of the rumors, I believe it's on 95 Mac. I believe it's also coming from D Information. Oh, that's new. That's from Minchi Kuo. New ultra slim iPhone 17 to focus on form over function with just one camera. Oh, we have new Minchi Kuo rumors here. Good that I'm online for this, baby. First, the thing I wanted to cover here is... Oh, damn, where is it? I believe this came out yesterday, almost like right after my stream. You'll probably buy an SE4 by carrier. Yeah, well, I actually don't disagree with that. I think when you go for a carrier contract on a relatively cheapish device like this, I think that actually works pretty well. And again, you can also, of course, look, maybe a carrier would still have, well, I doubt that they would have like still like iPhone 14 Pros or something like that on a discount. But who knows? Maybe somebody has, or maybe you can get a really cheap carrier contract that is independent of a smartphone, and then look into getting a decently priced older iPhone. Where's the cooling rumor? iPhone graphite. Not the color. Yes, but I don't want to use those articles. Sam Mobile. Let's give Sam Mobile a chance here. Basically, this is coming also from like the same kind of roundups that we've already covered, and it's a very simple rumor. It basically builds upon one thing, and that is that Apple will improve cooling on this year's iPhone. Both iPhone 16 and 16 Pro will be getting graphite cooling on the actual A18 chip. Now, we don't know if both will have like the exact same size of graphite covering. I would kind of bet that the Pros probably get a larger graphite cover that obviously helps dissipate heat over a larger surface area, and that helps with heat dissipation. And the Pro models will have their steel chassis battery that will also help with heat dissipation. We've heard rumors that it would help reach like 40-watt charging, which would obviously compare very nicely to the current 27 watt peak charging, or 15 watts for wireless charging would move up to 20 watts charging, so a third faster when it comes to that. Daniel, you're saying will buy the SE4 for Apple Intelligence. Well, again, A18, this is something I've talked about yesterday. Like A18, will it be able to compute Apple Intelligence? Yes. Will the A18 that is being put in the SE4 necessarily have the amount of memory to actually handle on-device Apple Intelligence? That, unfortunately, I do not know. So do not rely on me in that regard. It might have to, if you're really, really price limited, it might mean that you would have to wait an extra year until you can get like a $500 Apple device like iPhone that supports Apple Intelligence, which is obviously a little weird. We have like $600 iPad Airs at this point with 128 gigabytes of base storage, M2 chip, things like that. It's just weird to me, like just because iPhones have like cellular modems, that they're so much disproportionately more expensive in that regard. But obviously Apple likes their margins, and that kind of makes sense for a business. So what do we have from Min-Chi Kuo? Well, there seem to be two rumors here. New ultra slim iPhone 17 to focus on form over function with just one camera. So that's breaking news. Set to debut next year. According to the analyst, the iPhone 17 Slim or Ultra, how can it be an Ultra with one camera, will focus on form over function, with the company making significant compromises to achieve an ultra slim design. At that point, it cannot be $1,300 though. At that point, it's more like a highly opinionated SE model. Screen size 6.6 inches with a screen resolution of 2740 by 1260, an A19 chip, dynamic island similar to current models, and Apple's in-house 5G modem instead of Qualcomm. Apple will reportedly discontinue the iPhone Plus model, and according to a rumor yesterday, the price they're targeting for this would be $1,299. The Plus model currently accounts for only about 5 to 10% of the total new iPhone shipments. It implies that the other three iPhone models already adequately cover the high-end market segments, making the Plus model redundant. The new Ultra Slim model is not positioned to replace the Plus. Instead, Apple is exploring new design trends beyond the existing line. This to me sounds like a complete prototype that will have like no justification of actually launching as a real product. That sounds completely artificial to me. I have no idea. Like, oh, the iPhone 17's camera will be a wide camera, which is this is the setup that we've talked about for the iPhone SE4. Like 48 megapixel, one main camera, like that would allow you to have like 2x zoom, but it's still like one camera. That just makes no sense. Now, obviously, they would save on space, but like, why? What would be the point? Even like 6.6 inches, what even is a 6.6 inch iPhone? 6.56 inches is what Apple calls 6.5 inches, and 6.66 inches, 6666, whatever, is their 6.7 inch devices. Like, would this be a size directly in between that? Like, that is exactly 6.6 inches? This is such a weird thing. Like, the iPhone 17 Slim keeps getting stupider and stupider. What the hell is going on here? So that's one rumor about the modem. And I guess that kind of plays into it, right? So two 2025 iPhone models would get Apple's in-house modems, which, by the way, we've had for years rumors, similar to how iPhone foldables have been pushed by 2 or 3 years. Apple's in-house modems have supposedly been delayed by 2 or 3 years for like the last 5 or 6 years, so over and over again. Apple is accelerating its move away from reliance on Qualcomm. In 2025, two new iPhone models will ditch Qualcomm's 5G chips. Let me guess, it's SE4 and then the 17 stupid S Slim, and adopt Apple's in-house 5G chips, the iPhone SE4 in quarter one and the ultra slim iPhone 17 in quarter three. Apple's plan is for a phased adoption of its own in-house 5G chips. That's like looking ahead to 2026 and beyond, if all goes well with the ramp up and distribution of Apple's in-house cellular chips, we'll undoubtedly see them added. That is not necessarily true. If they are very, very much inferior to what Qualcomm is putting out, they might keep those exclusive to like cheaper models. But yeah, people are basically saying like because Apple's contract with Qualcomm lasts until 2027, I highly doubt that they will just let it lapse. I think that they will keep that contract until like 2030 or something like that. But yeah, I have no idea what to say about this. So this would be baffling, not the modem stuff, but it would be baffling. Like, what? You're giving a new modem to your new most expensive device, supposedly, and your new SE? Like, you guys know what the iPhone 17 Slim sounds to me like right now? It sounds like an SE Plus. If it has one camera and the same modem as the SE4, it could just be the SE Plus. Am I wrong about that? Like, does that sound too crazy? Like, but like, in what way would it make sense for this to be a $12.99 device? Now, I know we've heard rumors that it would have an LTPO screen that would obviously put it way beyond the SE4. But like, what is the point of a single camera, slimness focused product with like a modem that Apple does not deem good enough for their actual flagships, but a device that is more expensive than those flagships? That, to me, I think these rumors are getting. I know what's happening. The iPhone 17 Slim is a ruse, just like the redesigned Apple Watch was for like the squared off design, where everyone thought we're getting a squared off design. I think the iPhone 17 Slim is a hoax, because or it's like a super different product and like it's in no way an ultra. Like, that just doesn't make sense. One camera instead of three on the Pro, much less the Pro Max, which has like even larger sensors or like new optics like what we have. Daniel, you're saying the first folder iPhone flip. The problem is that this doesn't even make sense for an iPhone flip. I know that, for example, like Vadim from MaxTech has been like sharing his theory that the Slim is actually the flip. But unfortunately, that also doesn't make too much sense, because you wouldn't want a flip to still have one camera. You would want to have it two, given how every other flip is on the market. And if you make your flip 20% more expensive than everything else, then you kind of want it to have the same two cameras. Apple can get away with having one fewer camera on their main iPhones than other $700 or $800 devices, which usually have three cameras, right? But that's because it's an iPhone, right? When it comes to and because they're similarly priced. If an Apple flip device is more expensive than the other flips, but then is so much technologically inferior, I just have no idea what exactly they're pitching here. I honestly think this might be a ruse. This might be like a hoax designed to like root out leakers, and Apple is feeding them false information. At least that's kind of my theory. But with that theory, I am kind of wrapping this up, because we have been streaming for almost 1.5 hours, which is pretty good. Um, or Daniel, you're saying it's too soon to have those reports. Well, it is a device that is coming out in a year and 2 months, according to them. So I have no idea what exactly we know or don't know. It might just be a prototype. Apple might have different ultra slim prototypes. Some designed to be like way more premium. Some designed to be more cheap. But yeah, to me, this just makes absolutely no sense. Um, but yeah, and we've had like leaks about like ultra devices and whatever for quite some time, like whether rebranded Pro Max or like an ultra that would sit on top of the Pro Max. And we've had obviously rumors that got delayed by a year or two, like 3D like 3D touch buttons, right? That didn't happen. USB-C came to iPhones like 3 or 4 years later than some leakers had expected. So yeah, if this is in any way real, I still think that it's not like temporarily real. Like I don't. If this is a device with that kind of appeal, then I think they might be working on some crazy tech like micro LED or whatever to push just like a super thinnest focused device. But everything we see here is stupid. We don't have revolutionary battery tech that would allow us to have the thickness of device, but still have decent battery life. Removing one camera doesn't give you that much extra internal space for better battery life and things like that. And obviously, if you price it even higher than the Pros and the Ultras, given like yesterday's leak, it's totally weird to have like 8 gigs of RAM on it, but the Pros have 12 gigs of RAM. So yeah, this to me is so weird, so strange that I honestly don't believe the totality of those rumors. Like if you actually combine them, that makes it less and less believable. But as I said, I will be wrapping it up, and I'll probably gonna chill now. Do I know if the camera? Okay, this is the last thing, Daniel. And by the way, before I answer that question, I do want to say if you want to support this channel before I go offline, please consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like, sharing out the video. Of course, commenting on the video also helps out with the algorithm. If you catch me live, please consider leaving a super chat or a super sticker. That's very much appreciated. Any small direct donation. If you want to support me in the long term, please consider becoming a channel member. Shout out to Angelica and Max Maximus as MarkTech Pro Max supporters over here on YouTube. And you can also become a direct supporter on Patreon. Shout out goes to Louis God, who is a MarkTech Pro Max supporter over there. Daniel, to your question, do I know if there will be a new camera redesign, whether it's for the Slim or in general, I honestly don't know. As I said actually before when we talked about the Pixel Fold, like the reason why Apple has their cameras on the side is because they're the closest to the motherboard this way. So it makes just the most sense. Apple could spread them out. There's nothing like architecturally that would prevent them to, but it would be an effort and it could result in them having to like make the battery smaller or something like that. So don't think that like Apple just puts them there for no reason. Whether or not they will move away from their like triangular camera design or something like that, I don't know. It was rumored that the Slim would be the first device that would introduce kind of like a pixel visor kind of camera design. But again, I would treat all rumors that come in regards to the iPhone Slim and everything else like that with a grain of salt right now, or with a lot of salt. So yeah, I unfortunately do not know. But thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching this video. As always, please let me know what you would like to see me cover next, and I'll see you next time. This is Mark Tech tuning out.